Hey everyone, my name is Jack and welcome to the channel. I talk about a variety of topics as they relate to real estate, investing, personal finance, and all those sorts of topics. If you like that sort of content, be sure to have a look around the channel and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of my new updates as I release them. The financial world's in a very weird spot right now. At the same time that we have stocks nearing their record highs again, if not breaking them in some spots in the market, at the same time we have at least 13% unemployment. That's reported by the government. Who knows if it's much higher, but we're in a very tough spot economically right now because of this pandemic, the closures that came with the government orders that surrounded the pandemic, the fear associated with it as well, and now looting to add insult to injury. So we're in a very weird spot there, and at the same time, 55% of retailers actually paid their rent in April and May. This is according to Datex Property Solutions, which showed that only about 54% of tenants actually paid their rent in April of this year, and only 58% actually paid their rent in May of this year. Already we're seeing a huge drain on the rental market and really on commercial real estate in general, which has lost so much revenue because all of these stores have had to close up shop. Many of them don't have cash to survive for very long, and they're not going to use that cash to pay for rent when they could put that off and maybe take care of employment costs, among other things. And this is compared to over 90% paying just a few months ago in March. Unfortunately, it's retail that's been one of the worst hit sectors in the entire economy. And I say unfortunately because retail not only supplies us with a lot of our consumer goods that we so much enjoy, it also supplies a lot of the jobs, at least low-income jobs, of the people who are most vulnerable in an economy like this. One of the most common jobs, if not the most common job, was actually working in retail leading up to this pandemic. Worse yet, even as we start to open up the economy again, we're going to have a lot of those jobs that are not going to be coming back since many businesses are simply gone. They're not just going to reappear out of thin air. No matter how much money the Fed prints, we are not going to have as many jobs as we did compared to just a few months ago. And we're also going to see a lot of conflict between landlords and tenants. This whole trend of tenants not paying rent is not going to just end with things going right back to normal. There's a lot of unpaid rent on the table. I just covered on this channel a couple days ago about the lawsuit between Simon Property Group suing its tenant Gap, which is one of its largest tenants, for $66 million in back rent. And that's going to be a very tough thing for a lot of landlords to try and go and collect rent from retailers who might not have a lot of cash, or certainly who are not willing to give up their cash as they face hard times in the coming really year. Because it's not as though this is some isolated issue. Real estate, especially commercial real estate, is very much tied to the greater financial market. The debt on many commercial properties is actually sold to investors as it's securitized into commercial mortgage-backed securities, among other debt products. So when a tenant stops paying rent and a landlord doesn't have the cash to pay the debt themselves, you have a big problem here well beyond just the landlord, because the landlord's debt is owned by many investors, often pension funds and larger institutional investors as well, even the government at times. Now the Fed even owns a bunch of commercial mortgage-backed securities, even though they're not legally supposed to be allowed to, but that's beside the point. And when the landlord can't pay the mortgage holders, these mortgage holders don't have money to pay their investors, who often are pensioners or municipalities who need that money to pay their pensioners or whoever's investing into these funds. That is a big problem. It has a much larger trickle-down effect than a lot of people might realize. This same sort of trend is really what caused a lot of the financial crisis back in 2008. It was a little bit different, but a lot of the same sort of trend where you had real estate, which was kind of the backbone of the mortgage-backed securities market, collapsed. And when that collapsed, the mortgage-backed securities market collapsed because debtors no longer could pay the mortgage holders. And when mortgage holders couldn't get paid, they couldn't pay pensioners and investors, and the whole thing came toppling down. That's why this figure of over 40% of retail tenants not paying the rent is so alarming, because that income is not just going to the landlord, it's going into the much greater financial system that very much rely on commercial real estate in a lot of ways. Now, some of the hardest hit sectors that have been affecting this have been hotels and restaurants as well. It really isn't surprising. Basically all travel has stopped, and many states specifically targeted restaurants in their quarantine orders that no one could go to restaurants, or at least they couldn't be open for open seating, and they had to be takeout and that sort of thing, which limited a ton of restaurants who weren't built to handle takeout delivery. But it certainly affected much larger tenants as well. I mentioned Gap earlier, but there is a lot of pain going through all of the sectors within retail that has really caused this huge trend of so many retailers not paying rent. And mind you, this is after a lot of bailout money has been given to them by the government, even if it's been through loans and the PPP program, among many other things, this alphabet soup of programs that we have going. Even all these programs have not been enough to save a lot of retailers, or at least not comfort them enough to start paying rent again. Now, it is interesting that we saw a slight bump in rent pay between April and May, but who knows if that's going to carry on into June. I would assume it would keep going back up as stores open up and more uncertainty is quelled, but you still have a lot of businesses that are going through a lot of hurt right now and probably are very low on cash if they have any at all, and they're not already dipping into debt. And this is new debt on top of a lot of debt that retailers already had. That's just to cover expenses. It's not really to invest in anything. So we'll see if retailers who were able to get debt to pay for their expenses are still able to pay for that as we get through this next year with unemployment so high, and certainly there's going to be less consumption because of so much unemployment. And when there's less consumption, that usually directly hurts retail, which is in the business of supplying consumables and giving us the ability to consume. So if there's no consumption, retail is typically hurt directly. There's a lot of interesting stuff happening in real estate right now, much of it revolving around this very issue of tenants withholding their rent in order to stay liquid in the event that they run into bigger problems, and treating rent almost like a secondary issue because of how much revenue they've lost because of this pandemic. It's a very weird spot for commercial real estate right now, and for those who invest in commercial real estate, either directly or indirectly. Which reminds me to remind you about the real estate portfolio that I created in M1 Finance. It basically takes a collection of REITs, including commercial mortgage-backed security REITs, if you want to get into that sort of space. Now, maybe right now is not the best time, but if there's an opportunity coming later this summer and you want to take advantage of it, definitely take a look at that portfolio. I'll leave a link in the description, as well as a link to the video above right now that breaks down that portfolio. I've talked about it on the channel before. And obviously, I just want to remind you, I'm not a financial advisor, and this video is not financial advice. None of my videos are. Please go get your own advice. I'm just a guy on YouTube, and definitely make your own decision when it comes to investing in anything, especially during these comparatively risky and very volatile times. And even if you don't want to invest right now, I do hope that you can at least keep up to date with these current issues. I'll be trying to keep showing them on my channel so that you're up to date on this information. I certainly want to keep up to date with the information, so I'd be appreciative if you subscribed and gave this video a like so I know to create more content like this. And it shows me and YouTube that you like this sort of content, and it'll go a long way towards helping the channel, I promise you. Well, I can't really promise to you on behalf of the YouTube gods, but I think it'll help, and I would appreciate it either way. Well, anyways, that's all I've got for today. If you like this video, please like it, as it helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any new updates. I post new videos every single week as they relate to personal finance, real estate investing, and all those sorts of topics. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss those updates. Check out my links in the description for all sorts of goodies like free stocks from Webull and Robinhood when you open your account. I do get a small affiliate commission with a lot of those links if you sign up for things, but it's of no extra cost to you, so you might as well take the free stuff. But until next time, take care.